What's up everyone, Pags here at MEI Studio. In this episode, we're not looking at a single mic, but a type of microphone and the many variations it has. It's all about small diaphragm mics, this time on the Mic Locker. I'm starting a series with this video on small diaphragm mics. This video is kind of like a primer for anyone looking for an overview of what these mics are, how they're commonly used, and what they look and sound and act like in use. This isn't the typical demo video. Those will come in the next few weeks for a bunch of the mics that we're going to be mentioning here. If there's one in particular that we talk about here and we have access to it, let me know in the comments and I'll try to get it on the schedule. Let's get into it. Microphones come in all shapes and sizes, from huge stereo ribbon mics whose housings are in excess of a foot long to MEMS mics that are smaller than the head of a pin. There seems to be a mic for just about every situation and application. Hydrophones can pick up sound in water, and contact transducer mics can pick up sound in solid objects. Most mics are meant to pick up sound through air. While the size of the microphone as a whole may be on the larger side, the actual part that picks up the sound can be large, medium, small, or downright tiny. This goes for ribbon mics, dynamic mics, and condenser mics. Let's take a dive into what's considered small diaphragm microphones. By far the smallest type of microphone is what's called a MEMS mic, or micro electromechanical system. This type of mic that not many people even know that they own can be found in many smartphones. While some still use Electret condensers, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the MEMS has made its mark on the device landscape for mobile devices and in hearing aids, since their size is incredibly small. In 2015, a MEMS mic was created by Cirrus Logic that was 1/6 the size of a bedbug, or roughly the size of a poppy seed. That's a small mic. The device usually has two components, the MEMS and the ASIC, or Application Specific Integrated Circuit, which are connected together by an impossibly thin gold wire. The MEMS itself is similar to a condenser mic in that there is a tiny membrane that is suspended near a plate that, when vibrated by sound, causes electrical capacitance to change between the two sides. That's a mouthful. There are two varieties of these mics, analog and digital, with the difference simply being the type of output from the device. The digital variety does the analog conversion right on the ASIC part of the device, where the analog simply puts out an analog audio voltage which can be hooked up to just about anything. While we don't currently see these mics in the pro audio world, it may just be a matter of time before we start seeing MEMS array mics for ultra-compact surround sound applications and immersive 3D audio. Next up, we have a technology that's been around for a very long time, the Electret condenser. Originally developed in Japan by a scientist named Yoguchi back in 1920, it would take another 41 years for James West and Gerhard Sessler at Bell Labs to perfect it. Back in 1920, the materials available at the time weren't able to hold a charge for very long, so the mic would essentially fade out after a short time and become useless. West and Sessler were able to develop new materials that could hold a charge almost indefinitely. So how does that work? In regular true condenser microphones, there's a backplate that gets charged or biased by external voltage that we all call phantom power. The phantom power is sent to the backplate, which charges the metal up and creates a voltage difference between the moving part, the diaphragm, and the backplate. If this sounds confusing, it kind of is, but all you really need to know is that a true condenser microphone cannot work without power. Now, for an Electret, instead of the mic needing phantom power to charge the backplate, a special method of charging certain materials while in their liquid state, then cooling them, leaves the material with a permanent charge. Think of it as like when you rub your feet on carpet and carry around a charge until you touch something like a sibling and release that pent-up charge with impunity. The process of creating the Electret's backplate is kind of similar, only the charge doesn't get shockingly released. You're probably thinking right now, well, if an Electret mic doesn't need phantom power, why do I still need to engage phantom power to use one? Well, the output of the Electret, just like the regular condenser, is just creating a change in capacitance between two materials. It's not a usable audio signal, kinda. So we need circuitry to turn that varying capacitance into a workable audio signal that's at a decent level by amplifying it. In the case of condenser mics, that can be done with some vacuum tubes or some transistors. An Electret typically uses some kind of FET or field effect transistor to do the same, though just about any type of amplifier can work with an Electret. This type of element can be anywhere from a few millimeters wide to looking just like a large diaphragm condenser microphone's transducer, just like we see in the Shure KSM32. One of the fun parts about Electret capsules is that they can have an amazingly flat response, which can be used for measurement devices like, this DBX measurement mic we use in the studio to feed signal into an analyzer, which helps to correct imperfections in the room's frequency response. Since there's no back door on this type of capsule, the polar pattern is typically omnidirectional. But, as is everything with audio, there are exceptions. Take this mic from AKG, the C418. It's a tiny clip-on mic that's often used for close miking drums and horns. It has a little clip mount that can be connected to the rim of a drum or a horn with ease and no need for a stand. These mics are hypercardioid. Since the Electret is suspended in this teeny head basket in a certain way, the designers were able to get a directional polar pattern from this mic. I have a bench tips video I never put out on how to repair one of these mics, but never put it out since I don't think I've ever seen anyone else besides me actually use these mics. AKG used to bundle a couple of these mics with a D112 back in the day as a drum recording package. These mics had their low end intentionally rolled off to compensate for the proximity effect of having these mics clipped directly to their sources. The clip end only has the transducer in it, and there's really no electronics at all. All the circuitry is found in the barrel at the other end of the permanently attached wire, which is one of the two spots where this mic usually winds up failing. It's usually the wire, or some drummer has obliterated the mic with a brutally accurate stick hit, causing the plastic to shatter. I will say, though, when these were new, they would get hit all the time and be fine. As the years went on, they've become more brittle, so. Shure had a similar idea with their SM98 and SM98A mics, which is probably my most favorite rack tom mic of all time. Same idea, only they didn't have a permanent cable attached and instead decided to use mini XLR cables to go between the mic and the barrel of fun called the ILP, or inline pre, which featured a pad and a bass roll-off switch. The original SM98 had a boxy version of the ILP, and the 98As used the barrel type, which is what we have here. The mic had accessories as well, which changed the cardioid pattern into supercardioid, which really helps out on drums. AKG did this kind of thing on the C1000Ss with their little clip-on attachments to change the frequency response and the polar pattern. Shure replaced these with the Beta 98 versions later on, which I didn't feel sounded as good, and the little built-in gooseneck thing really didn't do it for me. The regular SM98 and 98As are kind of rare now, but if you can find a working set with the ILP, it's a great percussion and horn mic in an ultra-small package. As you start to grow the size of the Electret, the frequency response can start to take on some more character. Some sound great, like the Shure KSM32, a large diaphragm Electret, or the T25 from Mic Parts, a medium diaphragm Electret. Some sound like absolute garbage, like this no-brand mic, which should only be purchased as a host for modification. The next step up would be a small condenser, or what some people call true condenser, which, as we heard before, uses an externally charged backplate from the phantom power supplied, or, in the case of a tube-style SDC, the tube power supply. Bee's Knees has released a tube SDC, the Lulu Tube, which was inspired by the Neumann KM54. Soyuz also has some tube SDCs, as well as a bunch of other companies. There are an almost limitless amount of SDCs that have been produced over the years. One of the most popular was the Neumann KM84, which was replaced by the KM184 in the 90s. Most of the SDC designs out there have either tried to emulate the Neumann mic or one of the first to market with small diaphragm condensers, Schoeps. If it's not broken, don't fix it, I guess. Schoeps released the M221 back in 1954, then the CM60 series in 1960, and then the first transistor phantom-powered condenser microphone in the world, the CMT20 in 1964, which incidentally was the same year that Neumann released the KM84. The Schoeps Colette mics have been mainstays for choral and orchestral recordings for about 50 years now. While these mics were and still are very expensive, there's no shortage of companies that have copied their tried and true designs and have even tried to improve upon them. Mic Parts modified the Schoeps CMC5 circuit for large diaphragm condensers before releasing their own small diaphragm models with further improvements to the circuit. In addition to the Schoeps circuit, Mic Parts has also released their take on the Neumann circuit with some really useful modifications, such as this mic. The SDC High SPL, or the snare mic. The KM84 design claimed to have had a max SPL of 130 dB. Having used these mics in the past, I'm not so sure that was really the case, as trying to use it as a snare close mic for jazz, great sound with brushes, but for rock, the pad really needed to be engaged, and even then it was kind of iffy depending on the drummer. And don't even mention the fear of an errant stick smacking that thing. Talk about expensive. So anyway, Mic Parts modified the design to allow the mic to handle even higher SPLs, and the result is a really deep-sounding, yet articulate snare mic that does an amazing job. Since the diaphragms on these mics are so small, it's said that the transient response of the mic is better or more accurate than larger diaphragms, which has more mass and thus more the sound needs to be able to move to reproduce. From my experience, this is fundamentally true. These mics are often found as drum overheads to capture all the nuances of the kit, as well as in front of acoustic guitars to capture the smallest of details in the sound. For orchestras and choirs, the bottom end is captured equally full and robust when the sound is traveling through still air. But, as is the case with most every type of microphone, especially small diaphragm condensers are more prone to not handling plosives or puffs of air very well. In fact, most people discourage use for them for vocals because of this. However, like any other tool, it's about how you use it. And if you use it improperly, you're probably going to have a bad time. While most dynamic and large diaphragm condensers we typically put at 0 degrees on axis with the vocal source, small diaphragm condensers can be put a bit off axis and still not lose any of the detail from the source like so. And from here, Peter Piper can pick all the pickled peanuts and pizzas he wants without any issue. Though, I'd still suggest putting a pop filter on there, just in case. One other characteristic of SDCs is the unique way polar patterns are handled. With many SDCs, the capsule is removable by the user and can be swapped out for different polar options, such as omni, cardioid, supercardioid. Since there's only one diaphragm on these capsules, a figure 8 pattern isn't attainable on an end address mic. This makes me question why Shure couldn't have made their Beta 181 mic a multi-pattern. Was the perfect vessel to try out that kind of thing? I think it was a missed opportunity there. So if a smaller condenser diaphragm can yield a better transient response, could the same be said for smaller dynamic coil diaphragms? Or a small ribbon? Well, as we saw in our last video on the AEA KU5A, a small ribbon can capture an amazing amount of detail in the high end. As far as a moving coil mic goes, yep, same is true there as well. Take the Bayer Dynamic M201. Often confused for a condenser based on looks, this is in fact a dynamic mic. And it's my go-to for snare drum when I want a really bright attack. If I'm looking for something a bit darker, the Mic Parts High SPL SDC gets the job. While SDCs are often referred to as pencil condensers for their small size, the total package they come in doesn't have to be small.
That's what she said.
I guess I walked into that one. Some shotgun mics, for instance, can be huge.
That's also what she said.
Measuring in at 18 inches long like the Sennheiser MKH 8070. The AKG C1000S comes in at about 9 inches, and the Shure SM81, while extremely thin, comes in at just shy of 9 inches itself. On the other side of that, the Schoeps CCM line comes in at just under 2 inches, or only 46 millimeters. Mics like the SE SDCs are kind of girthy and long, compared to the AKG Perception 170. Electro Voice applied their articulating head basket idea to one of their only condenser mics, the ND66, which makes fitting the mic into tight spaces a breeze.
That's
All right, I'll stop. Please.
okay.
Just,
Okay.
Please, I'll stop. End of the day, there's a mic out there for about every budget and situation to get a job done. It's just a matter of finding one that checks all the boxes for your situation. I'm going to give a shout out to Bark over at Obscure Mics for the comic relief here. If you haven't seen his channel, please check it out. Links in the description. He's got some great practical demos of oddball, rare, and off-brand mics, as well as newer mics that at times might be off the beaten path. So, as I said at the beginning of this is just an overview of the different types of small diaphragm mics, and we're going to do a few deeper dives into some of these over the next few weeks, starting with the Universal Audio SP1. As always, if you've gotten anything from today's video, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're interested in studio mics and other things audio related, hit that notify button so you'll be notified when we put up a new video. If you have any suggestions for a video or any questions regarding this one, please use that comment section or send us a message through the website. I'd love to hear from you. Well, that's it for this time. This is Pags, signing off.